David Gilbert is an American radical leftist organizer and activist who is currently imprisoned at Auburn Correctional Facility. Gilbert was a founding member of Columbia University Students for a Democratic Society and member of the Weather Underground organization. After about 10 years underground, he was arrested for his part in the Brinks robbery in October 1981, along with members of the Black Liberation Army and other radicals including Kathy Boudin, his partner and mother of Chesa Boudin. He and she both participated in that robbery and were sent to prison for their part in the resulting murders of Nyack police officers Waverly Brown and Edward O'Grady and Brinks guard Peter Paige. Activism and influences. David Gilbert grew up in a Jewish family in Brookline, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston. He was an Explorer Scout, and his father was post leader of a South Brookline Explorer post. Inspired in his teens by the Greensboro sit-ins and other events of the civil rights movement, he joined the Congress of Racial Equality at age 17. He entered Columbia University in 1962. In March 1965 Gilbert founded the Independent Committee on Vietnam at Columbia University. Later, in the same year, he co-founded the Columbia University chapter of Students for a Democratic Society which merged with ICV in the fall of 1966 even though there was already a chapter set in place that was formed in the early 60s. The SDS chapter founded by Gilbert became renowned. He traveled regularly to Harlem while working as a tutor, and saw Malcolm X speak at Barnard College in February 1965, experiences he describes as formative. Gilbert was one of the known attendees, by the FBI, at the Flint War Council. Gilbert, Kathy Boudin and Judith Alice Clark formed the May 19 Communist Organization. After graduating from Columbia University in June 1966, Gilbert spent most of his days and evenings during the fall of 1967 downtown attending grad school at the New School, building an SDS chapter there or attending meetings at the New York SDS regional office. In addition, Gilbert spent his spare time studying Marx's Das Kapital book and writing new left theoretical papers on imperialism and U.S. domestic consumption, consumerism and the new working class. As Columbia SDS grew during the spring 1967 term, Gilbert returned to the Columbia campus to offer a radical education counter-course for Columbia SDS freshmen and sophomores in a lounge in Ferris Booth Hall. Known by the late 1960s primarily as a young theorist, publishing articles in New Left Notes and other movement publications, he went on to play an organizing role in the April-May 1968 Columbia student strike. On April 4, 1968 Gilbert had his first arrest after walking into a police riot where 6 officers were beating a kid. He could not just stand there and allow it to continue, so police turned on him. His charge was assaulting a police officer. His lawyer advised him to take a plea bargain because going to trial would mean the word of 6 officers against his. He pled guilty to disorderly conduct and was fined $50. During the Columbia strike, which began on April 23, 1968, as part of the strike team and since he was in good relations with some of the faculty, Gilbert was called in to be a negotiator. At the time of the strike he was a graduate student at the New School for Social Research. In October 1969, he headed up a weather collective in Denver and was arrested twice. The first arrest was for when he was passing out leaflets at a mall and his comrades were inside setting off a smoke bomb. The second arrest was when he was charged with assault with a deadly weapon after arresting officers found a rock in his pocket. Weather Underground. In 1969 SDS split into different ideological factions and Weatherman emerged, its purpose being to build up armed struggle amidst young white Americans in support of the Black Panthers and other militant groups and also oppose the war in Vietnam via activities intended to bring the war home. Gilbert joined this group in 1969 with his friend, Ted Gold, who later died in the March 1970 Greenwich Village townhouse explosion, along with fellow Weather members, Diana Orton and Terry Robbins. The group became a clandestine operation, and the organization was renamed the Weather Underground. When Weather went underground, members often used money they already had or received from their family to fund their efforts. Gilbert cashed in his Israel bonds and half of that money went to supporting Weather and the other half was put into the Black Panther Bail Fund. David Gilbert became a part of the Bay Area Collective and they were living in a San Francisco apartment. He and another member were out working on another group's car in spring of 1971 when they were approached by two men in suits claiming to be real estate agents. The suits asked a few questions and then left, alerting Gilbert that there might be a problem. He suspected that these men were actually FBI agents looking for information. After several meetings within the group, they decided to stay put for a while. After more suspicious men started inquiring into the activities of other members, they decided to travel north. They holed up in a motel in Portland on a rainy night and watched television. Although not on the group's coordinating committee, Gilbert did act as a regional leader, spending at least some of these years in Colorado. The Weather Underground committed several small bombings directed towards governmental and business property and buildings. As support for the group began to wane on the left, the pace of actions lessened and some members of the Weather Underground resurfaced in late 1976 and early 1977. Gilbert resurfaced briefly in Denver, Colorado between 1977 and 1979. Denver is where he helped organize a weather collective in October 1969. Before surfacing, he managed to get his criminal charges dropped so he did not face any legal penalties. Gilbert, however, did not think it was in the best interest of the movement for him to resurface. Most Weather members were not prosecuted or did not serve time in prison despite having been sought by the police for years. Police misconduct was the cause of many charges eventually being thrown out of court. Gilbert opted to continue his life underground. Gilbert and his partner, Kathy Boudin, remained active even following the birth of their son, Chesa Boudin, in August 1980. Brinks robbery. In the late 1970s or early 1980s, Gilbert and other white activists took the name RATF, declaring their solidarity with the Black Liberation Army. On October 20, 1981, the RATF participated along with several members of the BLA in an attempt to rob a Brinks armored car at the Nyack Mall, near Nyack, New York. While Gilbert and Boudin waited in a U-Haul truck in a nearby parking lot, unarmed BLA members took another vehicle to the mall, where a Brinks truck was making a delivery. They confronted the guards and a shootout ensued, wounding guard Joe Trombino after he let off one shot and killing his co-worker, Peter Paige. The robbers then took $1.6 million in cash and sped off to transfer into the waiting U-Haul. The truck was soon stopped by a police roadblock. Gilbert and Boudin surrendered, but when the officers tried to search the back of the vehicle, BLA members emerged shooting. Two police officers, Waverly L. Brown and Edward J. O'Grady, died in the shootout. Gilbert fled the scene with other RATF and BLA members but was caught by police that day. He was convicted and sentenced in 1983 to 75 years for 3 counts of felony murder. His extremely long sentence for participating in this action may be due to his decision not to participate in his trial, not recognizing the authority of the state to try him. Gilbert has admitted that his participation in the Brinks robbery was wrong and apologized for his role in the tragic loss of life on that day. He does not deny his role in the robbery and subsequent murders. Imprisonment. Gilbert co-founded an inmate peer education program on HIV and AIDS in the Auburn Correctional Facility in 1987, and a similar, more successful project in Great Meadows Prison in Comstock following his transfer there. He has published book reviews and essays in a number of small independent newspapers and journals, some of which were collected into the anthology No Surrender, Writings from an Anti-Imperialist Political Prisoner in 2004. He has also published longer single pieces on the topics of misleading AIDS conspiracy theories and white working-class political consciousness. The 2003 documentary The Weather Underground featured interview segments with Gilbert, raising his profile beyond those in the small political prisoner support network who have been following his progress since his incarceration. The DVD release of The Weather Underground features a longer interview with Gilbert as a bonus feature. Gilbert has served time in numerous upstate New York prisons, and is currently incarcerated at the Auburn Correctional Facility in Auburn, New York. He is not eligible for parole until October 13, 2056. Contributions. David Gilbert co-wrote the pamphlet U.S. Imperialism with David Loud. The pamphlet was used across the country as a study guide by SDSers. Gilbert co-wrote an article entitled Praxis and the New Left. It appeared in the first issue of Praxis on February 13, 1967. The article, co-written with Bob Gottlieb and Jerry Tenney, was part of a longer position paper called the Port Authority Statement. There is a mini-biography on David Gilbert on page 312 of the book Outlaws of America, The Weather Underground and the Politics of Solidarity, by Dan Berger. In an article published in the Columbia Daily Spectator on April 2, 1983, Bob Feldman wrote, "Beyond Brinks, David Gilbert talks about the robbery, the underground, the struggle." Gilbert was one of a small group that edited and rewrote Blair's initial draft of Prairie Fire. In response to Prairie Fire's purpose, Gilbert said, "We needed something to remobilize us, we needed to have an organization to fight imperialism." Love and Struggle, My Life in SDS, The Weather Underground and Beyond, by David Gilbert PM Press, 2012. See also, Weather Underground Organization, May 19 Communist Organization, List of Weatherman Actions. Notes. External links, writings by David Gilbert from the Chesa Boudin website, an interview from 1985, in which Gilbert discusses the Brinks robbery and his trial. From the site Informations sur des prisonniers, es politiques. The official site of the documentary The Weather Underground, directed by Sam Green. NY State Department of Correctional Services file, Gilbert is an advisor and collaborator of the annual Certain Days Free Political Prisoners calendar.